voice can break the dark. A single spark ignites the heart. But if we turn when justice calls, the chains we forge will bind us all. When truth is silence, when lies take hold, the cost is freedom, the soul grows cold. No one stands tall while another must fall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, defending every voice, defending every right. For the moment we falter, the moment we stall, we lose our own freedom when we let others fall. You can't stand free while others kneel. When justice fades, it's freedom they steal. An innocent condemned, a crime unspoken, and with it the bond of liberty is broken. No tyrant rules without our consent. Oppression thrives where silence is spent. Stand for the weak, the silence is small, or freedom will crumble for us all. We're mavericks of freedom, guardians of the light, fighting for the truth, for what is just and right. For the rights of one are the rights of all. We rise or we fall by answering the call. Even those we may oppose deserve the rights we all uphold. For if we deny them what is fair, we build our own prison in despair. The fight's not easy, it never will be, but justice for one is the key to be free. We stand as mavericks, together we strive, defending the rights that keep freedom alive. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, upholding every truth, protecting every right. When one is oppressed, we're all in the thrall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. So take a stand, let your courage rise. Defend the truth, don't compromise. For the soul of the world, the writing's on the wall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all.
Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back, Mavericks. Great to have everybody here. You'll be happy to see that Kevin Michellizi is going to join us tonight. The subject, peace. Hopefully. We'll see how it goes. Didn't go so well in Munich, but maybe things will go better in Saudi Arabia. Stay with us. Kevin will join us right after this.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on Earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching. The world is watching. on TV,
The entire world is watching.
on social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
All right, let's just get this show on the road and bring Kevin in immediately. Right off the top, how are you?
Hey, Rick. Tired, but hey, I'm here.
Good to have you back, my friend. Maybe we can together make some sense out of all the craziness that's been going on out there.
Good luck.
Every day, it's another bombshell news story. Trump has been, wow, I mean, just signing a flurry of executive orders, and we've had this security conference in Munich. We were here to really talk tonight, I guess, about mainly what's going to happen with this peace process, if you want to call it that. I've never seen anything quite like this happening before. So help me out here. Where do you want to begin?
Well, you know, we could start with President Musk talking a couple of nights ago.
The big Musk or the little X Musk? Which one was the president?
I'm not sure which one was in control. Yeah.
Did you see that video where little X told him to shut his mouth?
Yeah, after he picked his nose and ate it.
No, just okay. And you know, people here, some people that triggered some people when I showed that. Even tonight, I had a couple of people, even before the show, accusing me of having Trump derangement syndrome. But I'm not the guy picking my nose and eating it, telling the president to shut up. I just shared it. That's all. Some people don't like that.
I love that video.
I think there's truth from the mouths of babes, right?
Yep.
It's amazing what $270 million will buy you. A lot of latitude in the Oval Office. The whole thing, that seemed really weird to me. There's Musk. Everybody else is in a suit and tie, and he's there in his trench coat and his hat and his T-shirt. He's got his little guy with him standing behind the president, and Trump is looking, I don't know, like he's a fifth wheel or something. It's like he's out of place. And then he told him to shut his effing mouth. Little X, you shut your effing mouth. You're not the real president. Wow.
Yeah, you know, that whole setup was interesting. And I thought maybe it was a one-off and he made a mistake having Musk there. But I earlier today watched the press conference he did with his energy guys, And it was a similar situation. All of them standing around, they're all doing the talking, and Trump's kind of like, so.
Everything is weird. And then, I didn't see that news conference, but I did see yesterday the reports that they've fired so many people from the Department of Energy that they got rid of the people who oversee the nuclear stockpile, and now they're trying to rehire them, but they've lost their email addresses and they can't contact them. I can't make this stuff up, folks. And again, it's not that I have Trump derangement syndrome. I'm just sharing the facts with you. Don't shoot the messenger.
And you'd think with somebody like Musk on the team, somebody would be smart enough to say, don't we have personnel files with telephone numbers?
Maybe it's because they stole all the data and took it over over to pump into the algorithms at X or Twitter, whatever you want to call. I don't know. How do you lose that information? I guess maybe because the only emails they had were government emails and they deleted them because they fired them. I can't fathom this. And these are the people who are keeping the nuclear stockpiles safe and secure. But hey, what could go wrong?
Yeah, well, if they were just government emails, they probably had no access to them after they were fired. So but I don't know. Where I work, they've got my phone number, they've got my personal email, they know how to contact me.
Yes. This I find very disturbing. These were the people who made sure that these are the people who took care of all the nukes. So, yeah. My God, what the hell is going on over there?
Well, the U.S. doesn't need nukes anyway. After all, Putin and Trump are having a brofest.
That's what I understand. I have to say, I've never seen anything like this. The bluster, the hyperbole, the insults, just the crazy talk. Everything's just off the cuff, straight from the hip. And he's kicking all his allies in the shins. But I don't think he's making any friends over in Russia either. So he's just pissing everybody off. What's the perception over in Crimea and Russia? How do people view what's going on with Trump? Is there optimism? Do they think he's a fool? Do they like him? How do they see it?
Well, they still like him. And, when we start talking about Putin and Trump agreeing to go to each other's countries, and, this is all, supposed conversations about Trump coming to the May 9th parade. That hasn't been confirmed by any government source here. I think Trump will be much better received in Russia than Putin would be in the United States. So,
yes, yeah.
There's a lot of respect here for the fact that he appears to be, kicking butt and taking names. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, and what do you make of that style? To me, I think he's sort of ideologically aligned with Putin on cultural issues, which is, I think, probably why a lot of people in Russia like him. And when he's kicking butt, he's kicking liberal or progressive butt in various countries. He's targeting, I think, pretty much all of Western society, because I think he views most leaders in the West as being progressives or liberals. So he's very much in confrontation with them, especially right now.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I see comments over in the chat there. I don't think either of us are Trump haters. I know I'm not a Trump hater.
I'm pissed off at him right now, but I don't hate him. I'm really pissed off with him because he wants to take over my country. But
I look forward to your new, red, white, and blue merch with the stars and stripes on it.
Yes, and the maple
51
leaf.
stars and 13 stripes. Maybe because Canada's been around for so long, they'll add a 14th stripe.
I don't ever remember him mentioning even once annexing Canada during the campaign, but he gets into office and suddenly he's ready to annex Canada, take over Greenland, maybe take over Mexico. Certainly, he lays claim to the Gulf of Mexico. Talks about abolishing censorship, while at the same time ejecting reporters from the White House news conferences if they refuse to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. So it seems a little bit hypocritical to me. Nevertheless, he's sent our country into a tizzy. I'll tell you that. It's divided now, and people are very worried about it.
As are many countries right now because of him.
Yes.
And I think the biggest problem with people being in a tizzy is the fact that Trump's actually doing what he said he would do. Now, is Trump doing it? Is the guys around him doing it? I think is what's happened is he's put enough smart guys around him that see reality on the ground, and they've been whispering in his ear. Originally, before the election, shortly after, he was all about, I have this peace proposal, and here are all the points. We're going to add a demilitarized zone, and we're going to, lots of things that Russia would never agree to. Mm-hmm. And we have Vance over at the Munich Security Conference, and Hegseth making very similar statements about the whole conflict and what they see as the problem in Europe. And quite honestly, they were kind of telling the truth. Mm-hmm. How many politicians, you had the same thing with Trudeau. How many politicians are being concerned with what their people want and what their people say? Now, it's a little bit overboard in focusing solely on yourself, like the U.S. administration is doing. But, I think Europe has got bigger problems than, Russia and China. Russia has never once said that they plan to go all the way through Ukraine and into Europe. So we know that's not a real concern. That's a storyline by the Western Europeans, probably in line with the Biden administration, wanting to fight till the last Ukrainian. And Trump basically, through Hegseth and J.D. Vance has said, no more, we're not going to do it. So I really think the peace thing, Europe is saying it, Zelensky's saying it, you can't have a true peace process without including us. This is them kind of, not wanting to rip the lace off their panties.
Well, the thing that I also find a little bit difficult to understand is how can you, on the one hand, sit there and say that you want Europe to step up and be responsible for any security guarantees that might come out of a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia, but as you're going to Saudi Arabia, maybe next week, sometime maybe this month if it happens, you're not going to include Europe at the table. So on the one hand, you're saying whatever we negotiate, you're going to be responsible for it, but you don't get to come and participate in the negotiations. And even with Ukraine, it wasn't even clear if they would have a seat at the table. although now I guess it was Russia that actually stepped up and said, no, Ukraine should be at the table. But I'm seeing all these different reports, and even tonight, with regard to what might happen in Saudi Arabia, I'm not seeing actual confirmation coming from Russia that they're going to be there. I am seeing reports, one on RT saying that, like, quoting reports out of the West saying that there will be a meeting. And I'm seeing reports in the West tonight that came out a couple, 3 hours ago saying that it's going to happen. A quote, quoting anonymous sources. And then what happened in Munich was, I think, kind of a train wreck, because we heard Trump saying that there was going to be a meeting in Munich between the United States, Russia, officials there. Zelensky was finally going to be involved. This was supposed to happen. And the day before, at least the day before, maybe even earlier than that, Russia was saying they hadn't been invited. And then, of course, they didn't show up. And even though they knew Trump had said it, they said they didn't receive a formal invitation. Germany said that, they weren't really invited. So they kind of confirmed that. But Russia didn't make an effort to go. So the whole thing just runs off the rails. I see it as kind of on the one hand, sort of a snub to Trump, because I think he's just not following proper etiquette. And so, like, Russia's probably, Putin's likely sitting there saying, well, if you're not going to send us a formal invitation, I don't know, man. This whole thing is weird. So then we saw Zelensky in a conference room meeting with reporters overnight, and the Russians didn't show up. It was strange. What's your take on it?
Well, if Russia wasn't actually invited by Europe, they have no reason to go. They're still making progress on the ground. They still have the upper hand. Trump, they all understand that he says lots of things that can't be or aren't confirmed. I've seen no confirmation out of either side, other than Trump says so, that there will be a meeting in Saudi Arabia, that, Trump is coming to May 9th and Putin's going to the United States. Putin won't go to Europe mainly because they're part of the International Criminal Court, and they have an arrest warrant out for him. And under current conditions, they would be the first ones to pick him up and throw him behind bars. So, I wouldn't go either at that point. I really think what's going on here is, in light of the Trump administration in general focusing on internal problems, they basically, we heard Trump the other day say, well, I gave Putin some conditions, and if he won't agree to them, I'll put more sanctions on Russia. People here laughed about that. It's like, what more sanctions can you put on us? We're the most sanctioned country in the world, and we're doing just fine. We've got positive, GDP growth. Go ahead, sanction us some more, please. But, I think really what's going on, Putin and Trump spent 90 minutes talking. That's confirmed. And they talked about the Middle East and Ukraine and AI and a bunch of different topics. Zelensky got the secondary call for 7 minutes. So let's think about what that phone call was. That was basically, in my opinion, a call from Trump saying, Vladimir, you're going to do this. Zelensky, Trump said that he agreed to sign this agreement to give the U.S., security guarantees in their mineral rights of $500 billion. And Zelensky made statements that he had agreed to it. He then backed off, saying he didn't have time to read it and Trump was trying to fool him. And now his administration is going back and they're pointing at his own statements and saying that he had it in advance, he read it, he asked for edits, sent it back to the United States, and that was the agreement that was supposed to come to Munich that he then refused to sign. So I don't think he's in control in Ukraine either. Now you have Europe saying that, well, we'll buy those mineral rights. And even though Trump was only willing to give you troops once peace was achieved, so Trump's using it as a negotiating tactic. I won't give you men to protect you unless you come to peace with Russia. They're saying, well, we'll send troops to fight with you and protect you if you sell the mineral rights to us. Well, Zelensky wants 120,000 troops, and Europe is saying, well, we can afford to give you 25. So there's the state of NATO without the United States. So there isn't anything real that's going to happen other than if Trump has actually come to some agreement with Russia about you can keep the territory you've got. You stop the fighting. We won't let Ukraine join NATO. Even NATO is going, well, Trump has no right to decide that. But if the United States doesn't back Ukraine joining NATO, they can't join NATO. So it really comes down to if they made an agreement and, it's in Russia's favor, the United States just walks away and the conflict will end quickly anyway, because Europe certainly can't afford to handle them themselves. They don't have the manpower to do it. They don't have the money to do it. Their economy is already faltering. Their people don't want it. So now we've come full circle around to Vance's statements and Hegseth's statements that we're going to focus on ourselves. You guys need to deal with your own security. Does the EU and NATO really need that? Can they afford that? So it wouldn't surprise me if peace came out of it. It isn't going to happen by Easter, but I also don't believe the conflict will end then either. I don't think Russia's just going to pack up and go home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you want? I've got the clips of actually Hegseth and Vance queued up here. Hegseth's clip is shorter. If I can find it. Yeah. So let me find him here. I think it's right here actually. Yeah, here it is. This is the most recent clip we have from him. And again, yeah, this is him saying that, they want Europe to provide any security guarantees under a peace deal because the United States isn't prepared to do it. But I think everything we're hearing is neurotic. You get a statement like this on one hand, but then I'm also hearing that the U.S. is moving possibly troops into Poland, which I haven't confirmed, but this is all just really weird. All right, let's run the clip of Hegseth here.
The United States faces consequential threats to our homeland. We must and we are focusing on security of our own borders. We also face a peer competitor in the communist Chinese with the capability and intent to threaten our homeland and core national interests in the Indo-Pacific. The U.S. is prioritizing deterring war with China in the Pacific, recognizing the reality of scarcity and making the resourcing trade-offs to ensure deterrence does not fail. We ask each of your countries to step up on fulfilling the commitments that you have made. And we challenge your countries and your citizens to double down and recommit yourselves not only to Ukraine's immediate security needs, but to Europe's long-term defense and deterrence goals. the United States remains committed to the NATO alliance and to the defense partnership with Europe. Full stop. But the United States will no longer tolerate an imbalanced relationship which encourages dependency. Rather, our relationship will prioritize empowering Europe to own responsibility for its own security. As the war approaches its third anniversary, our message is clear. The bloodshed must stop, and this war must end. He intends to end this war by diplomacy and bringing both Russia and Ukraine to the table. And the U.S. Department of Defense will help achieve this goal. We want, like you, a sovereign and prosperous Ukraine. But we must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective. Chasing this illusionary goal will only prolong the war and cause more suffering. A durable peace for Ukraine must include robust security guarantees to ensure that the war will not begin again. This must not be Minsk 3.0. That said, the United States does not believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome of a negotiated settlement.
Although I think that was a couple of days ago. I think he's kind of walked that back. I believe it. And this is the thing. I kind of think there's inconsistency in messaging. There is, I think you have people like Hegseth who are saying things not really in alignment with. I can't follow it all.
Yeah, but is there inconsistency? I mean, J.D. Vance yesterday said pretty much the same message, but he also said that, we aren't going to continue funding you guys. We put a lot more money into it. We've got, 4 to 5 times more money invested in Ukraine than you guys do. You guys aren't contributing to NATO. And, reality is it's true. You look at Poland, other border states, they're actually pouring more money into NATO than countries like Germany. Why is that? Germany is much larger. They had a much better economy, but they don't now. So their people are tired of it. There's been talk for years about them having their own security alliance. So I think the messaging is very similar. The United States just isn't going to expend the money anymore, and they want those countries to step up and pay more.
Well, I think that people need to listen to what Elon Musk really said in that Oval Office news conference, where he indicated the United States, if it doesn't rein in it, if it doesn't deal with its $2 trillion a year deficit, which is adding every year to the $37 trillion debt, that the United States is about to go bankrupt. Which is why I don't understand why so many Canadians are so eager to give up our sovereignty and join Canada as the 51st state, when it's pretty clear to me that what Trump really wants, even though he's saying is a bailout, he's saying that we're going to get a tax break and that we'll be part of the new golden age of America. And this is our road to economic prosperity and military security, because they'll protect us. And I'm kind of thinking, I think maybe we need protection from you, not, maybe we don't need, we maybe need protection from you. We don't need you see, one of the reasons we need protection from them is because I think they want to take over Canada so they can scoop up our wealth, our resources, to pay off their debt. Why would we want to join a country where the guy who's in charge of governmental efficiency just said they're about to go bankrupt. He literally said that in the news conference. So think twice, folks.
Yeah. They also said they're going to cut $1 trillion off, within the year. So
it feels a lot like economic shock therapy, where they're going with all this stuff. The tariffs, if tariffs are actually left in place, and he's tariffing everybody, you'll have massive inflation in the United States because everything will increase in price. He's hacking and slashing the federal budget, so you're sucking all that money out of the economy. That's degrowth, massive degrowth. I think he's, how many trillions of dollars? 2 trillion or some massive amount of money I think it's 2 trillion that Musk is sucking out of the economy. I just looked at what they're doing with the budget over in Congress. I think another 4.3 trillion they're looking at cutting in government spending in the budget. You take that kind of money out of the economy that fast, I don't care how much you think you're going to extract from your Department of External Revenue, that ain't gonna happen, pal. And you're gonna collapse your economy.
Yeah, I mean, it may happen. They may cut the debt that much, but how much are they really adding that people aren't looking at? All these people that they're unemploying to save money, well, now it falls to the states to support them. Who do the states get a majority of their money for unemployment from? Federal government. So, they're playing games with the numbers, but if you look at what they're doing, it's all a bunch of businessmen acting like businessmen, with the slash and cut, and we don't care about anybody else except our bottom line.
And what they're cutting is basically various kinds of social programs. So, and yeah, I'm sure there's waste there, but and even corruption, but you take that money out of the economy that fast, and that's an economic shock that results in, oh my God, the impact on the economy, that amount of money, that's just economic activity that stops. All those economic linkages stop. Yeah. It's
USAID was not humanitarian money.
Well, that's soft power, if you will, being exerted worldwide through different programs and corruption in some cases. And, some things I think were coming out of there that had humanitarian purposes, but a lot of
there was a lot of black sleeve funding coming out of there too. Mm-hmm. Having worked on some of those programs that were funded by USAID.
Yeah.
I can tell you it was not humanitarian. It was soft power.
Yeah. No doubt about it. Nevertheless, I mean, and all I'm saying is that purely from the focus of economics, this is like reverse Keynesianism, reverse Keynesian economics. If you have a downturn in the economy, then John Maynard Keynes would advocate for, and it works. You invest, you put tax dollars into like government make work projects, build bridges or roads, and just inject money into the economy to stimulate the economy, right? To get things going. You put people to work. And hopefully you do it with projects that pay dividends in the long run, like an investment in infrastructure and things that will pay back with increased efficiency in the economy over time, like roads to get goods to market and people to work and railways and things like that. But what this is it's the opposite of that. You have tariffs, which will result in inflation. You have the extraction of money from the economy So you're putting a lot of people out of work at the same time. Well, when just in the federal budget, I'm not talking about USAID. I'm talking about the federal budget. They're hacking and slashing over there now, and that will affect all kinds of programs. And then you'll have a lot of people out of work, and the social safety nets that had been there, some of those will be gone. Then you're going to contribute to your social programs, your drug problems on the streets, all of the homelessness. This is a recipe for disaster, in my view.
Yeah, I won't disagree with you on any of that. I can look at Russia and I can make a comparison. Russia has survived sanctions primarily because the government has invested in their economy. They make sure people stay at work. We have a perfectly good street sweeping machine in town here that could just drive around, one guy, clean all the streets, have it done in a couple of days. But they have the thing garaged, and they hire a bunch of little old ladies and little old men, hand them brooms, and they're out there manually sweeping the streets, being paid by the government. So they've created jobs, and this is how they've really boosted their economy. People said, well, sanctions will hurt them. But like you said, they're investing in the economy. Mm-hmm. Now, they aren't putting people out of work. Now, we don't have good social nets. And that can be a motivator too, because since the government is creating jobs, they may be basically, if we, take it back to the United States, they may be picking tomatoes for $1 an hour, but their choice is pick tomatoes for $1 an hour or not have, the safety net. Here you don't get programs when you don't work. You are expected to work, you get some money, and then the government will help you out a little bit. Pensions are low here. Disability payments are low here. And it's all set up to encourage people to actually do what they can to help themselves. So the United States has taken a similar model, except they're forgetting that all these people have no desire to work because of the years and years of these giant safety nets they've put in place. They've encouraged people to stay on welfare, to stay on social services. And unless they really make it worth their while, you can't unemploy everybody and say, and we're not going to help you. But then let's look at, the major fires, the hurricanes and things. The United States hasn't been helping people anyway. When you give $700 to somebody who lost their home in Hawaii.
Well, that's not exactly accurate, because that was $700 up front during the crisis. They've got other programs in place since then to, there's the aid is more substantial than that. But and I'd have to go and find out exactly what the programs are, but that was an initial assistance up front.
Yeah, but how long did that upfront money last people living in Hawaii?
Kevin, I'd have to go and look up the details on these particular programs. I know that there were media reports that I would say exaggerated the problem, because they made it sound like that was all the people were going to get, but that's not all that has been done for people. Nor is it all that's being done in California either, which is another bizarre story to me. But
no, I agree. We know mainstream media. They've got to make a story out of everything because nobody watches the story about the fireman saving the cat.
Yeah, and not just the mainstream media. I'm seeing all kinds of propaganda, just other inaccurate reports, a lot of inaccurate reports from alternative media as well on a lot of stories these days. So it's across the board as far as I'm concerned. But that also kind of segues into, I think, what J.D. Vance was talking about, at Munich when he was, in his speech, he touches on misinformation, disinformation in the age of social media and artificial intelligence. Here I have his speech queued up. Let's listen to just a little bit of what he had to say.
And normally, we mean threats to our external security. I see many great military leaders gathered here today. But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. Now, I was struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election. He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany too. Now, these cavalier statements are shocking to American ears. For years, we've been told that everything we fund and support is in the name of our shared democratic values. Everything from our Ukraine policy to digital censorship is billed as a defense of democracy. But when we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard. And I say ourselves because I fundamentally believe that we are on the same team. We must do more than talk about democratic values, we must live them. Now, within living memory of many of you in this room, the Cold War positioned defenders of democracy against much more tyrannical forces on this continent. And consider the side in that fight that censored dissidents, that closed churches, that canceled elections. Were they the good guys? Certainly not. And thank God they lost the Cold War. They lost because they neither valued nor respected all of the extraordinary blessings of liberty. The freedom to surprise, to make mistakes, to invent, to build. As it turns out, you can't mandate innovation or creativity, just as you can't force people what to think, what to feel, or what to believe. And we believe those things are certainly connected.
Okay, so what's your initial thought?
Well, I think he's absolutely correct. You know, I have no issue with the comments that J.D. Vance made. You know, I had somebody take me to task earlier saying the United States needs to look at itself first. They've done a lot in 3 weeks towards these things. But have they gone too far? You know, now all of a sudden the social media platforms are all getting on board with, we aren't going to censor people, you know, to which I'll say, bullshit. You know, they still are. You still have to be careful what you say on certain social media platforms. But, you know, when you try to silence one side of the story, obviously you have an issue with, you know, tainting the story, tainting what people hear, tainting how people think. And, you know, you can say, well, we're doing it in the name of propaganda, but then you don't deal with the guys that you allow, you know, your mainstream media, the independents that you allow to speak. You don't give any thought to the fact that they twist the story to what the government wants it to be as well. So I think opposing opinions is perfectly okay and should be allowed. And we see in a lot of places in Europe that they don't allow that. You know, cut RT off, can't let people hear them. Cut Sputnik off, can't hear people, let people hear them. You know, people in the United States, they don't have them on their TV sets, but they can still access them. So, there's got to be a balance in it rather than saying, you guys are bad. But I think his point is they need to start taking some looks at some things. They need to start understanding what their people want. Musk went on about this the other night. The United States gave Trump a mandate to do what we're doing. Well, yes, half the country did. But, when you have a lot of Western European countries banning members of their own parliaments and, their democracies from running for office because they have a pro-Russian view, is it really democracy? Shouldn't you allow the people to make the choice of who they want to be in office rather than controlling who they can pick from and making sure that they have the view of the current government?
Normally, I would just straight up agree with what Vance says. But I think his comments are somewhat naive, or maybe willfully blind to a new reality that is present because of the technology. What I'm talking about is coming from mainstream media. There were checks and balances. There were rules, guardrails in place to provide in Canada through organizations like the Radio, Television, Digital News Association that I used to belong to when I was part of the mainstream media, the Canadian Association of Journalists, even regulations related to news coverage imposed on broadcasters. And I came from the private side, not from the, and it was privately owned, especially at that time, not so much government involvement in the network that I worked for, other than, of course, you get a broadcast license. But as part of that broadcast license, there were rules for fairness and balance, and you had to provide equal airtime, or for maybe not even equal time, but at least provide access to the airwaves for various political views from all the different political parties. And even here in Canada, even from the time when I was a kid, the Communist Party got to speak, even on CBC, all the way over to the conservative side. So the whole spectrum of voices was heard. And in fact, even on CBC, they used to have, right around the 11 p.m. news, there was a segment, not as part of the news, but they would just give airtime to each party in a rotating basis to just deliver their message. But what's going on in social media now is there's a lack of transparency, and there's a lot of hidden activity that's going on, cloaking of what the source of the message is, and cloaking of the political bias. What I've really kind of clued in on is there are actual marketing companies and political marketing companies, if you want to call them that hire influencers to deliver messages, and they are out there with live streams, programs, shows where they deliver a political message and narrative. There are whole networks of them now where people look at them as though they're journalists and they think they're watching some sort of news program, but it isn't at all. It's actually just political marketing. And there's big money behind it. Those streams are amplified where they're boosted on Facebook and YouTube with like money to make sure they get placed in front of you. They have ads running around them. because they're a network, each of the live streams feeds off the other to help each other boost up in the algorithm. So you have a whole network of different channels. It makes it look like there's more activity and more social acceptance and authority online than there really is. So it distorts things. And then the messaging is consistent over and over again to convince people that something is real or that there's more support for a particular issue than maybe there really is. And more than that, it's also, there's negative messaging aimed at the political opponents to demonize them, turn them into terrible human beings, to just hammer on them. And it's not balanced at all. In fact, it's very biased. And they're also employing the most advanced marketing techniques, the science behind marketing, which includes psychology, to deliver the message to people in a way that it evokes an emotional response and sucks them down into really the matrix, a digital matrix where they become very immersed in a information bubble where they're insulated even from other messages. Then you take somebody like Elon Musk, who invests massive amounts of money to buy like a social media platform. And he has the ability now, just like Zuckerberg or any of the others, to use the algorithm to feed particular kinds of messaging out here and there. We don't know how the algorithms work. We have seen people express concerns across the spectrum about these social media companies using their power to influence public opinion, especially during elections, in ways that people can't truly comprehend. And you may recall the first time Trump was elected, they went to a company called Cambridge Analytica, and his opponents flipped out because they said it was unfair that he was using this data to leverage or to target his campaign advertising on Facebook and on Twitter at the time. And it was true. I mean, he's using this data to very narrowly target it. But since then, we've seen really an expansion and refinement of these techniques, and even new technologies and new techniques come online. So it's even more powerful. And I think there's legitimacy there. And we should be very concerned about how this information is being distributed to people, sent out to people, targeting people from all different political groups, parties, even foreign governments in all different countries. So Musk does have the ability to influence elections in Europe and in the United States and probably in Russia. I mean, like wherever Twitter is available, he has this immense power, just as Zuckerberg has. But I think he's actually got it down to an art form and a science. I mean, you study marketing, advertising, going back to the days of Lucky Strike cigarette ads, where they convinced women to go out into the streets and smoke because they turned it into a women's liberation campaign more than, buy these cigarettes because they're don't sell the cigarettes, sell the social aspect of it, right? So, but it goes way beyond that now, and people I don't think are fully aware that we are all being manipulated on some level. And the scary part here for me is that this kind of activity is not about informing people in a balanced, fair way. This is not journalism. This is marketing. It's manipulation. It is, I would say, unethical on many fronts, which is why many countries do have laws that really are supposed to prohibit hidden messaging like this. There has to be a level of transparency, particularly in political advertising. That's why even on social media, if you buy ad time, there are rules in place, even on social media in Canada, where you have to disclose that it's a political ad. But if you just set up a network of social media influencers and you don't call it an ad, this is journalism, but it isn't really journalism. And they're getting paid by political parties or political action groups in order to deliver a particular message. Now you've got a problem on your hands, because now the election is determined largely, or at least the political views of people are being controlled by whoever has the deepest pockets.
Well, is that any different than it's been for,
yes,
a long time?
Yes, it is different. It's definitely different.
It's only different because it's become more refined.
But
when you need to blow your nose, do you go to the store and buy, tissue paper, or do you go and buy Kleenex? So this is the power of marketing.
But that is advertising, right? And that. In fact, here's the thing. I am involved in marketing, okay, over the years because of my media company. And so I've always been very careful about the kind of advertising contracts that I've taken. I don't want any conflicts of interest with what I'm doing here or what I've ever done on television. There are always rules in place. And with every ad that is run on television, it has to go through an approval process. I have to send it to the Television Bureau of Canada. I send it there. It's reviewed. If it violates any rules, and this is like for an ad, it could be for anything. It could be for a car. It could be for coffee. It can be there are all kinds of rules that apply to a television ad in this country. Tons of rules. If it doesn't comply, you don't get approved. With anything you're running on social media, none of that stuff goes through that process.
Okay, but let's get down to the core of it.
Sure.
They make sure that it's approved and it doesn't violate rules.
Mm-hmm.
But do they say, okay, we're not going to let you repeat the word Kleenex over and over and over and over to condition people to your viewpoint, so that all of a sudden the standard word for tissue paper becomes Kleenex? Not at all.
No.
So this is the standard basis of any propaganda, any advertising, any marketing. Now, I agree, it's gotten very refined and scientific. Hell, I did perception management for a living in the United States. So I've talked about this before. It's all computerized. They can measure how people are thinking about subjects. They can inject stories. They can move people's viewpoints on things.
Yeah.
It comes down to a good old American way of, the bottom line, the almighty dollar.
Yeah, the issue for me is transparency. I think that it's important to have disclosure. If you're out there and you're pretending to be a journalist, but you're really just on the payroll for a political party or a political action group, and it's your job to deliver their narrative, then I think it's important that you disclose that. And I'm not saying that they should be censored or they should be prevented from being allowed to even put that stuff out there. But if you're being paid to deliver political messaging, then I think the public deserves and needs to know that, so they at least understand what your bias is. But if you're just hiding that, if you're not acknowledging it, and it's all in the background, and you're sitting there in front of a desk and it looks like you're on a news set and you're saying these things, people think, because it looks like a news set, that it's some sort of an unbiased form of journalism, but it isn't really journalism at all.
Well, I agree. Most mainstream media is not journalism anymore. It's a bunch of young bucks sitting in the newsroom, creating stories without going and doing their research. When you were in the business back then, you actually had to go out and research that story and give an unbiased opinion about something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they don't do that now.
Yeah, well, not very much of it, that's for sure. Yeah. If at all.
Well,
yeah.
So in full disclosure, I'm both a U.S. and a Russian citizen. I vote in both elections as long as the U.S. allows me to. I don't get paid for my opinion. So I'm just putting that out there for people so they know. I'm not just spewing what I'm spewing for the fact of spewing it. I'm spewing it for the fact that it's what I see. So, and reality is, more people putting information out there need to do that research, need to do that. You do it.
Yeah. I just think that there needs to be transparency. If you're on the payroll for the Conservative Party of Canada or the Liberals or the Democrats in the States or whatever it might be, I just think that the public deserves to know that. I think it's important for people to be aware so that you understand what it is you're actually watching. And I think that's really mainly the solution to the problem, not so much censorship, but transparency.
Yeah. So that brings us all the way full circle back to Vance's statements. Were they about censorship or were they about transparency? The story with Western Europe is we don't allow our citizens to watch this news or that news or that news because all they're doing is feeding you propaganda without being transparent about their own roles in it as well.
Yeah.
So, to be honest with you, all of these messages, Hegseth, J.D. Vance, Trump, Musk, I think the main core of these messages is you guys want to continue doing what you want to do. Good luck. Go for it. We're not helping you anymore. I think the United States is stepping out of many things and focusing inward. Is that right? Many people would say, yes, we should focus on our own people. But those same people are forgetting that nowadays we have a global economy. You can't survive without everybody else. So, we've gone from this end of the pendulum to this end without looking at what should be in the middle.
Yeah. Let's go back to Vance's speech here.
And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. And in the interest of comedy, my friends, but also in the interest of truth, I will admit that sometimes the loudest voices for censorship have come not from within Europe, but from within my own country, where the prior administration threatened and bullied social media companies to censor so-called misinformation. Misinformation like, for example, the idea that coronavirus had likely leaked from a laboratory in China. Our own government encouraged private companies to silence people who dared to utter what turned out to be an obvious truth. So I come here today not just with an observation, but with an offer. And just as the Biden administration seemed desperate to silence people for speaking their minds, so the Trump administration will do precisely the opposite, and I hope that we can work together on that. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town, and under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree. Now, we're at the point, of course, that the situation has gotten so bad that this December, Romania straight up canceled the results of a presidential election.
Okay, so, okay, except I would argue that there's a lot of hypocrisy there that is on full display just within the last 3 weeks, because Trump, I think, is guilty of censorship just in other ways. Case in point, the Gulf of America issue, which I already highlighted. And if Trump doesn't like the way you edit an interview, he'll sue you for $10 billion, which is what he did with 60 Minutes, because he didn't like what they did with the Kamala Harris interview, which when I reviewed it, I would say what they did with it was inconsequential. It's just that there was one version that had a short version of a clip following an answer, and then they ran the longer version later in the broadcast, in another broadcast, and he's suing them for $10 billion because he got his nose out of joint. Then on top of that, you see, it's not censorship in the usual way that people would think. It's like banning people. But what he's doing is he's saying, if you don't comply with what we are saying, and if you come after me, I'll take your broadcast license away. And if you've wronged me even in the past, I will have your job, which is why CNN took Jim Acosta, and they were going to push him off into the midnight hour and hide him. And so he says, well, screw that. You're just caving into Trump. So I quit. Now he's over on social media trying to do his own thing rather than allow them to do that. And I've never been a big fan of Jim Acosta, but you can see exactly what's happened there. And since he's been elected, have you noticed that the tone of the coverage has changed markedly? There's not... It's even from the first time, Trump 1.0 to Trump 2.0, there's not nearly as much criticism. They're afraid of him. And that's why you had all the social media oligarchs lined up there, and he was basically hauling them up front for his inaugural speech, saying, look, all these guys, they came to my inauguration, they're all bending the knee. They're all in alignment with me now. I control all these guys. And now there's not nearly as much anti-Trump media focused on him. Maybe you give me your take. I don't know if you're seeing things over in Crimea the way I'm seeing them here, because maybe what you see on social media is a little different. I don't know, Kevin, but go ahead.
Well, sure. I mean, I said this the day of his inauguration when they got them all there. RT called me and said, come on and tell us why he has all these guys from social media standing around him. And my comment at the time was, these guys are showing that they support Trump mainly because they are getting the freedom to exercise some authority on what goes on in the government. We know Musk has got great input into Trump and what goes on in the government. And on the other hand, that, Trump has control over them and they have to line up with him in order to, it's I'll scratch your back, I'll scratch mine. Typical business.
Gangsterism.
Yeah. I mean, it's what business does. And, unfortunately, Meatball Auditor back a little bit ago said Europe is having an emergency meeting in Ukraine. And reality is that's a piece of misinformation that he read somewhere that isn't true at all. There was a lot of posts in social media today saying that the entire European Commission was going to be in Ukraine to meet to talk about how to support them. And this was released by the Ukrainian government on their social media. And guys like this are putting, full faith in the fact that that government is telling them the truth. And reality is there is a small European contingent in Lviv who is doing a program on education. And they're the ones who are meeting with people over there. So, I'm giving you the point on social media is just an uncontrollable beast. And you can't go from, we aren't going to allow you to post an opposing viewpoint to, we're going to let you post anything you want and influence you in other ways. So people need to be aware that not everything they see and hear, no matter who it's from, is necessarily the truth. And it's getting more and more and more difficult for people to determine what is the truth and what isn't. I miss the days of watching the news from way back when, you'd get the news and you knew it was relatively unbiased, and then you could hear the opposing views. But it's nothing like it is now. That's really all I've got to say about it. It's, I don't disagree. Do I think that Europe needs to do more about their censorship? Absolutely. I think they've gone overboard, and I do think they need to put some more into their own security rather than relying on the United States' pocketbook. Like you said earlier in the show, the United States pocketbook is looking mighty thin right now. So they really have no choice to appease their own citizens, the U.S. citizens, that we're saving money, we're not wasting money. But behind the scenes is what's really going on is, gee, we're going broke and we need to do something about it. So it plays to that. We're going to tell people what they want to hear, make them happy because they voted for us. But, they're not being transparent about, let's say, all of the truth. They're telling partial truths.
Yeah. And the other problem with just having some sort of free-for-all online is that there are also people, organizations, governments who will just outright lie about things and even create fake realities online. as a psyop to even overthrow a government. So at some point there has to be a line drawn, because if someone's involved not in free speech, but I would call it malicious speech, then that's a harm to society and an assault on democracy. And I don't think anybody, if you're aware of it, would really want that to happen.
Yeah. But
so
it's the way of the world. It's the way of the world these days. So
yes, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't be taking steps to mitigate the damage in some proper way, right? Where we don't infringe on people's rights, that whatever we do is designed to protect people's rights. But where that balance is struck, that's where the difficulty comes in. It's a challenge. Yeah.
I agree. So, I mean, I see it all over the world. I agree with what Vance said. I think Europe needs to take a hard look at themselves. The U.S. administration made no friends, but they also need to realize that their goal of keeping Ukraine going to the last Ukrainian really isn't based in reality. And, they probably have bigger issues to worry about. So, do I agree with everything he said? And do I think it, go out there and you guys do this? No, but I think the point was valid. So, reality is you're still going to hear about how bad Russia is. Over in Russia, we will still hear about how unfair Europe and the United States are. So we're still going to hear these storylines on both sides of the pond. It happens on both sides. It will continue to happen. Maybe a little less with Trump between the United States and Putin. After all, they're going to have, Victory Day parades together and go visit the Saudis and sing Kumbaya and, but it's businessmen. The Saudis are businessmen. The Crown Prince is a businessman. Trump's a businessman. Putin is not the businessman, but he has the ability to think like one. So I think you've got a lot of people worrying about the bottom line.
That's
their own bottom line.
Yes, that's exactly right. Let's take a quick break. I got a couple more questions for you. I know it's late at night, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. But we'll be right back, and we're going to wrap things up with Kevin.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
So where do you think we're going with the talks? Where are we at? You're just aerial view here.
Yeah, you for whatever reason just flipped over to your computer, Mike.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Where I think this is all going is absolutely nothing more than the United States is pulling out of Ukraine. I think that's the gist of the entire thing, is We're going to make friends with Putin. We're going to say, yeah, we think you should keep your territories and good luck to the rest of you. But we're not going to be involved anymore. I think ultimately, I hear you. You keep flipping back and forth for some reason. But, ultimately, I think that's what it comes down to is we're pulling out of the conflict. And this is our idea of a peace deal. And if you guys want to keep it going, good luck with Russia on your own. And, obviously, as long as Europe supports Ukraine in continuing a war and the bloodshed, Russia isn't going to stop. But the United States, I think, is done. Trump is going to say, I put this together, Europe screwed it up. I think Europe is going to be the fall guy. Can't hear you. Now you've gone away. Testing 1 2. Testing. Testing 1 2. No. There you are.
You can hear me there. That's
yep.
tinny audio though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my goodness. You know what? Just hang on a second.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow. Maybe too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Hopefully you can hear me. I hope.
Oh, hey, there you are.
All right. So what about NATO? Do you think this is driving a wedge between the United States and the other NATO countries, and will NATO survive this?
I think this is the United States saying, NATO, we aren't going to be involved either. They made the statement, we aren't going to guarantee that we will support you just because it's a NATO war. I think they're looking at the fact, again, you got a bunch of people who can actually see reality on the ground. And if Europe starts sending troops into Ukraine, Putin will do what he said he was going to do. He will strike back. And I think the United States is just washing their hands of it, saying, if you guys want to be fools and you don't want to look at, what's really going on, then good luck to you. I think NATO has been and will continue to fail. Will it be this year, next year? No. I think it's just on a downhill grade at this point.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to bring up or touch on tonight that we might have missed, sir?
Nope. I think it's been a good discussion. We had a little bit of disagreement, a little bit of agreement.
Mm-hmm.
We had a raucous crowd out in the chat.
As always.
As always.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you staying up late because I know it's a long haul for you to do these programs with us. I really do appreciate it. And I appreciate the perspective that you bring. It gives us balance, and I think that's very important.
Yeah, well, glad to be here. Thanks, Rick.
All right, sir. Kevin, don't be a stranger. We'll have you back on really soon. And Mavericks, I will be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Love you guys. Catch you then on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.